Welcome to Retro Reviews, everybody. Today we're going over the top 10 most dangerous toys ever created. These
are pretty retro. You might have had some of these depending on how old you are.
So put on your oven mitts because this episode's about to be real hot.
Ah!
First up, we have the Atomic Energy Laboratory. This was released in 1951 and contained 4 jars of different uranium ores. The purpose was to allow kids to experiment with radioactive materials and learn and create chemical reactions. Sounds kind of fun, right?
Yeah. You know what I want for Christmas? Low-grade uranium cores.
So this kit actually encouraged kids to play hide and seek using the radioactive materials and scatter them around the room and then use a Geiger counter to, try to find the radioactive materials.
The idea of it is actually cool, it's just not safe. All right, next up is the Snacktime Cabbage Patch Kid doll. It was released in 1996 by Mattel. And it was a pretty interesting doll. It was an update to the popular Cabbage Patch doll line, which gives us all nightmares from time to time. No! Its main attraction was its real-time chewing action. Basically, it would eat little toy snacks that came with it, little plastic bananas and so forth. And the problem with that is that kids were actually getting their fingers caught in the device. So there was definitely some times when little kids were running around, they had the doll in their hair, and it actually has a sucking action, so it would bite into it and pull it down into its little mouth, so you had to get your hair cut in order to get out of it. Mattel wound up pulling the toy off the shelf and stopped manufacturing in 1997.
It's the prequel to The Walking Dead.
It was a prequel.
Next up, we have the Battlestar Galactica Colonial Viper. Now in 1978, a 4-year-old unfortunately shot the toy missile into his mouth and choked and died. Mattel was sued, the toy was recalled, and packaging has changed forever. This is literally the reason why we have choking warning labels on toys from this very event.
Pretty historic event actually here, because you see that all the time on all sorts of board games and toys now. And it was actually a pretty fair warning to parents to be careful and to keep an eye on your kids when playing with something like this. It should only be used of a certain age.
Now the toy did say it had a pretend laser torpedo, so at least people didn't buy the toy thinking they were getting a real torpedo?
It's a pretend laser torpedo that will kill you.
Oh, that's true.
All right, so up next is the belt buckle Derringer toy gun. It was a plastic belt that you would wear. It had a gun. You wouldn't use your hand, you would actually actuate the pistol mechanism on the gun by sticking your stomach out forward in sort of an obscene manner. What made it dangerous really was the caps themselves were pretty volatile, and sometimes it would catch fire. And so you would have this burning plastic gun that was on fire that would cause some very serious burns, and you would be panicking trying to get this belt off of you. So shortly after its release in 1959, it was banned.
You sure it wasn't teaching kids to do something else?
To like jazzercise and stick your gut out.
That's it, yeah. Next up, we have Creepy Crawlers, released in 1964. Now this was sort of the male solution to the Easy Bake Oven, but instead of cooking food, you produced hot molten plastic.
Of course, it was supposed to be boy-centric.
Now the main reason that this is bad was because it used a hot open face oven. So it's basically a hot plate that just sat on top of a heating mechanism. No cover, nothing.
I bet those molten plastic fumes are pretty good for you too. Sarcasm, that's a terrible thing, highly toxic.
You can play with it after you've played with your Atomic Energy Laboratory.
So up next, number 6 is slap wrap, or slap bracelets. You might know there's a lot of different types of those things, knockoffs and such. They were released in 1983. They were invented by a teacher in Wisconsin, Stuart Anders. And it was a curved piece of metal, almost like measuring tape. It was wrapped in a thin piece of cloth or plastic. And you would slap it down on your wrist and it would wrap around and flatten out, and you would have a bracelet automatically. It hurt pretty much every time. You can see why they banned them in high schools, which is pretty ironic because it was invented by a teacher. After a couple of weeks of using that, it will break through the material and there's unfinished metal under there. So there was a major cause or risk of slicing yourself with this eventually at some point.
I had one of these. I thought it was really cool. I thought it was so cool up until the point where your best friend takes it and then tries to slap it on your wrist as hard as possible.
I know you're like, here, look at this, isn't that cool? And he'll be like, yeah, great. Slaps it down on you real hard.
Oh, thanks, I wanted a new bruise.
Why wouldn't teachers want this in a high school? I don't understand, I'm bewildered.
Next up, we have YOYO water balls, released in the 2000s. Now, this was basically a stretchy ball attached to a stretchy string made from diesel hydrocarbons, which was flammable.
And they didn't know it was going to be a big flammable piece of death.
But that's not the problem. The diesel hydrocarbons are not the problem. The problem is they can wrap around people's necks and strangle them.
True.
Things got so bad that they ended up banning these things in New York, New Jersey, and Illinois.
But it's not banned in Ohio.
Not banned in Ohio.
So we're still at risk.
Well, that's a risk I'm willing to take. 409 injuries were reported. Now, half of those, more than half actually, were from strangulation or suffocation.
It's just a stretchy ball and a stretchy string. Why did it hurt so many people?
If only they lit it on fire instead.
Diesel hydrocarbons. What do we make this toy out of? Diesel.
Hydrocarbons, hide your wife.
All right, number 8 on our list is Clackers, or Knockers, or Click-Clacks. And there was a bunch of different names for this same toy idea. Basically, it was a metal ring, and it had 2 pieces of string attached to it, and then attached to the string are hard acrylic balls. And you could whomp them up and down, and once you get the right rhythm, the right momentum, the 2 balls would smack into each other going back and forth, make a loud, irritating sound, and eventually the ball itself would crack, and it would break, and it would shatter shrapnel of plastic in your face and your arms. It's actually very dangerous, but it took them about 20 years to actually ban the toy.
I had a newer version of these that was created in the 90s, and mine didn't explode, so I'm not saying you're lying.
Yeah, well,
but
well, it's a good idea for an annoying toy. So they have modernized it. You can get them as like party favors now.
Party favors.
Still pretty annoying.
What parties are you going to?
I'm going to the best parties, exclusive, VIP, black tie only.
Next up, we have Empire Little Lady Stove. This was released in the 1950s and was very similar to the Easy Bake Oven, almost a knockoff of the Easy Bake Oven, except it could reach temperatures of up to 600 degrees.
That's a ridiculous amount of heat.
To put this in perspective for you, normal real ovens shut off at like 550.
Correct.
You don't get hotter than that. At these temperatures, it can cause 3rd-degree burns and can possibly cause a fire.
I love the name too, the Little Lady Oven.
It's a good thing men don't like to cook.
We don't. Finally, and ultimately, number 10 on our list are javelin darts, or jarts, or as I knew them when I was a kid, lawn darts. Basically, they'd be a set of darts heavy enough to pierce the ground. They'd be sold with a pair of targets that you could place on the ground, throw them from far off, and practice that way. And these were, I thought, great fun when I was a kid, but come to realize now, especially after going over all these statistics, what a dangerous item this was. Lawn darts, according to the Consumer Product Safety Commission, were responsible for a whopping 7,000 injuries, by far the most harmful, deadliest item on our list. And a lot of times kids would do really stupid things with them. They would throw them straight up in the air and everybody run in different directions, watch it come down. I know I've done that personally. They were released in the 1950s and they didn't get banned until 1988 after a tragic death. It's the reason some regulation for toys to make sure that they're safe is a good thing.
They should have just attached knives to darts.
I'm sure at some point some redneck did.
Would have been a little safer.
Or you can make them out of, you know, diesel hydrocarbons. Safe.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Did we miss anything? I don't know. Use the comment section below and tell us. Click the video. Blah!